Back for another InitVerse talk show today with Matt Peters, head of marketing at Seda. Welcome to the show today, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. I think I've heard I heard about Seda maybe. I was messing around a little bit in the Cosmos ecosystem over the last couple years, and what how when did you guys come to fruition, or what's the backstory on Seda?
Yeah, I mean it's actually an interesting backstory because it wasn't originally Seda. Originally, the founding team built a first party oracle over on Aurora and Nia called Flux, and it was the second highest oracle to Chainlink in terms of TVS, which is like the oracle metric. And then TLDR, long story short, realized they don't scale very well, oracles, and kind of like where they took a bet on this kind of like modular thesis, 4 or 5 years ago that this is where the industry would go.
Hmm.
Pretty wild bet back then. Anyway, turned out to be more or less true at this point. And taking that thesis, they decided to build an oracle with a completely different architectural design. That's when they decided to use the Cosmos SDK and build Seda, which is kind of like we'll go into the details later, I guess, but like an evolved architecture on traditional oracles. So they've been building Seda for, I think this is like the third year with the Seda name out there, and then they upgraded from Flux, the token from Flux to Seda. Yeah, and we're a few weeks out from mainnet. So the journey to the beginning, as I like to call it, is only a few weeks away.
Yeah, I remember you guys popping up in my Kepler wallet, so I did a little bit of research back then. But yeah, it's interesting that it started on Near too, because I'm like those are Near's like one of my other favorite chains. So interesting. How did you personally get started in tech and crypto? I'm curious. I always ask people that.
Yeah, I actually started out in gaming. So I worked for an agency back in Australia that was working with Immutable X, because they're based in Sydney, Australia. And we did some work on Gods Unchained. And then just there was like a client of mine from my Web2 sales job. And he asked me if I could help him in a crypto contract that he got for his team, really small team. So I was like, yeah, I'll jump in. Jumped on that, joined his team full time, and then just made the progression through his agency and then out onto my own as a consultant. And I was in esports and gaming for a long time. It was actually where I started. And then through that, just was personally involved in crypto before I even got into it with this agency. So then moved across at my first chance to get some DeFi protocol experience, and then went down the stack, worked for a layer one as well. And then Seda popped up, the opportunity to join the Seda team popped up about 18 months ago. And I really wanted to work in infrastructure as kind of what I love right now. I think it's where the industry needs to get right first. I mean, I'm an apps guy, everyone's an app guy, right? But without the good infrastructure, we're not going to have good apps. So let's get infra right. And that's what kind of drew me to Seda. And I just really liked the team. They had a lot of history, a lot of success with their oracles as well, and sort of the stuff they were doing beforehand. And the wider team as well. I've been in crypto for a long time. So saw a lot of green flags and decided to jump on board. And here we are now, 18 months later.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's a major demand for like cross-border payments in gaming. I don't know. It's not something that it's not my realm, but I can imagine that, especially 5 years ago or something, that would have been even bigger. Yeah, but let's get into more about SATA. Can you just like give us a brief overview for people that might not know a lot about SATA protocol?
Yeah, I'll give you the TLDR because we can get into the weeds pretty quickly, but I will try to avoid doing that for the listeners who are coming across this for the first time. So TLDR on it is we're a programmable Oracle network, so you're probably familiar with like Chainlinks and Pyth as sort of the two bigger oracles in the space. What's an oracle? It transports data from a data source to a blockchain because they can't do that on their own, so they need this like third-party data bridge, if you like. Traditional oracles, they work opposite to the way that we work. They work in the way that they say, here's the menu of data feeds that you're allowed to use, and this is how they operate, and they're available only on these chains. That's what we built as well with Flux 5 years ago. And then we went, this isn't going to work. This is only going to bring use cases that fit the 100 or 500 feeds that we can make available. So we went, okay, let's build an Oracle network. And the difference is instead of saying to the developers, here's the menu of data feeds, Seda says, what data do you need? Where do you want it from? How do you need it returned for the use case that you're building? Like ordering a Domino's pizza, right? You create an order. Same thing on Seda. You build an Oracle program, which is an order that says what, where, and how. That lives on the Seda chain. And then every time you make a data request from whatever network you're on, we're like the Uber drivers of the blockchain world. We go out to your data sources that you've told us to go to. We get that data. We validate it in a decentralized way. We bring it back to the Seda chain. And then we have this little special ferry, like a boat that goes back and forth from every network
Mhm.
on the blockchain. So basically what that means, the TLDR is if you need any data, you can get it through Seda. So you're not restricted by what data you can get, and you can define how that data comes to your application. So outcome, you can build any application because you can access any data.
I've been interested in oracles for a long time myself as well. So this is an interesting conversation for me. I think they're like it's paramount to the entire industry that oracles function properly, and like 99% of people don't even understand what an oracle is. So this is an interesting
Yeah.
conversation. How many variations is it basically infinite that there are infinite variations to somebody spinning up their own oracle, or I'm kind of curious what that looks like or how that works.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the short answer is yes, it is infinite, because the way it's infinite is we have two buckets for data. One's public data, one's private data, right? So the public data, as long as there's an API or you can build a web scraping tool and create your own API,
Mhm.
you can get any data on the internet, right? So in terms of like what data you want to come on chain, is as long as it exists publicly, that's a guaranteed you can bring that on chain. As long as there's like, API key, API, or web scraping API. Then there's the private bucket as well. So we have our suite of like private suppliers, which is like maybe more tailored to traditional use cases, RWAs, DeFi, sports data, this kind of thing. Um, so the what data you can get is theoretically infinite. Where you can get it from is theoretically infinite in the public sector, and then obviously it's capped at the private providers that we've decided to partner with. And then the how you use it is theoretically infinite in the sense that if you can code the parameter into the Oracle program, which can actually be built in different languages as well. It doesn't have to be Solidity, or sorry, it doesn't have to be Rust. It could be anything, and you can compile it using WASM. Um, so really, yes. What do I expect to like come out? Where the industry's at now, I would say like where from the conversations we're having now before mainnet, where got RWAs and sort of like dynamic data feeds for the first time in DeFi to like for your collateralized debt products as well. So they can like look at different metrics on chain and off chain
Mhm.
and adjust their ratios according to different events, volume, trading, sentiment, whatever it might be. So I'm pretty keen to get that live and sort of see where DeFi, what I'm calling like 2.5, will go.
Maybe you could. That's a good explanation. Can you explain maybe a little bit more, like, in terms of modularity, like how does that change the game also? Because I told you before we got on here today, I was listening to one of your community calls recently, and it's like Chainlink is kind of like outdated tech now. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely how we frame it. And when I say outdated, I mean like it was designed for a different blockchain
Mhm.
landscape. So it was designed when there was like, you know, Ethereum, Cardano, maybe a couple of L2s, and then it sort of evolved its designers for that landscape. Uh, so in terms of this modularity, is like you don't get modularity with Chainlink, you get what you're given, which is fine if you're building on like Arbitrum or Ethereum and you just want the core price feeds, they're available there. Go for it. If you want to get something outside of what these legacy oracles are offering, which for example, Redstone, which is like third top three oracle right now, they're doing amazing things in terms of like fast pushing data on chain fast. And I really like their team. So I don't mean this in like a competitive way. I'm just saying that the design functions like this, we deployed all of their feeds that they've offered over 4 years. We built a program in 4 hours that brings all of their feeds on chain plus 1,250 extra feeds. So we basically doubled their catalog in 4 hours. So this is what modularity allows you to do because you build a container with the instructions that you want, and
Mhm.
you plug that container called an Oracle program onto the Seda chain, and then you just have to ping a bot that says they want this request done, they want this request done, and then our system goes and does it. We're already connected to the data world, if that makes sense, to all the data sources. You don't have to connect to us. You basically just send a bot over to say that you want us to go and do the thing. So we don't have to reintegrate to every single chain where if you look at like Chainlink and Redstone and you spin up a new chain tomorrow, they need to redeploy all their infrastructure to that network. That means new smart contracts. If it's in a new language, that's audits, it's testing, all these things. This is why, like, Chainlink, from what we understand, can charge like $1 million for their integration plus new feeds. Redstone can do it for like, 250, 300,000 or whatever. That's why we can be much more like competitive and flexible because we have this modular design where we just deploy a prover contract and a solver network to monitor that contract. So you just say to the contract, hey, I want this data. The solver then brings that across to Seda without us having to bring Seda to your chain.
Okay, very interesting. Great explanation. Are there any like unique anything unique to modular so you guys are focusing more on modularity. Is there anything unique to creating oracles for those type for chains that can plug into that as opposed to EVMs or the old world is unique?
Yeah, yeah, 100%, man. I mean, we just went live on the Conduit marketplace. We haven't announced it yet, but I mean, if people stumble across the marketplace, they'll see it. So I guess it's public. And the reason is like this modular thesis, right? Is you can one-click deploy a network with Conduit, with Caldera, Tanzi, whoever it might be, and they have like 90% of the infrastructure available to integrate. But Oracle's hasn't been one of them traditionally. Um, what they have them on the marketplace, but it means you have to then go and have the integration conversation with them, which means like new contracts, which means bargaining prices, so it's not technically one-click deployments. It's one-click deploy to have a conversation that takes 3 months. So with Seda, because we have one contract, it can be, more closer to this one click. And so what that means, like if we do enter into this world of, 1,000 app chains, in it's not going to be next year, but in 5 years or wherever, and we see applications having their own chains, they're going to be spinning them up to suit that application. So the thing that we always say is like application specific chains need application specific oracles because you can't build use cases for data feeds. It doesn't work that way. You need to build data feeds for use cases. So that's the way that we're looking at it. And that's what modularity allows you to do. It allows you to just plug your instructions into our system, and then we can plug our system to wherever it needs to go.
I think app chains are a super cool concept. What do you think is holding back like DeFi, like just dApps overall, or whatever you want to call them? What do you think? Do you think it is partially data, the exchange in data, or is there something that is specific that you think is holding the space back?
Yeah, I mean, data is definitely one of them. Like you talk to a lot of builders, and they have trouble accessing the data that they need because we know the use cases, right? If you go to any new ecosystem, get a Mega F, you go to Rice Chain, whatever, Monad, all the new ones, you know what you're going to get. You're going to see a DEX, you're going to see some kind of like NFT projects, you're going to see some games that have been done before, maybe like a trading card game. You're going to see
Yeah.
like your lending protocols, yield, right? It's like the five things.
Yeah.
And I always say like these are the five things that we can build with the data that we have now, because you just basically need price feeds more or less and randomness,
Mhm.
which is kind of if you just want to use the price feeds for the main price assets, that's fine. So how do you build applications which you can't get the data from? It's just not going to happen unless you build your own enshrined Oracle, and that means like, do you want to run the risk of making sure that Oracle functions correctly? I mean, the SAYS ecosystem's experiencing, we don't know all the details right now, but it seems to be that maybe an Oracle, they were having trouble with one of their Oracles. So these things unfortunately do happen. Do you also want the cost of running your own infrastructure? So I think like asking that question around like, well, why don't we just give open access to data for developers so that they can decide what they build, and then we can just make sure that data can come on chain and then build those use cases. I think that's like a great story, and I'm in marketing, so that's the narrative I push. However, like other things I think like are worth like highlighting, so it's not just complete shilling of Seda here, is I think we need like TradFi to come on chain. I think we need to see them come on chain just to bring like liquidity and just like push things like regulation forward, just so we have like a clear playing field, just to sort of mature the industry a little bit. And then I think it would be cooler to go and like down the Web3 philosophy a bit more. But I think we need that to sort of come on to make the playing field a bit more transparent and also viable with more liquidity and more users, and then build towards kind of that futuristic vision that the OGs in the space sort of have.
Yeah, I sort of think it might be like only 5 years away too. We're getting closer for sure. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, especially with chain abstraction, like you guys are working on, Near's working on. That's like super. I never understood like the idea to keep everything, in one place. Do you think that
Yeah.
do you think that there is like a future for chains? Like I sort of have like posited this idea like years back now that like Ethereum is I don't think the first mover advantage in smart contracts is the same as the first mover advantage as uh, a DApp in money like Bitcoin or whatever you want to say. I think that they're two different things, and then people want to be able to execute smart contracts quickly and securely. And Ethereum just didn't scale, and now you have all this economic energy going to other layers. Do you think that can Ethereum basically? I guess my question to you is somebody who's working on chain abstraction. Do you think that Ethereum can like survive? Is it gonna just like continue to lose market share, or how do you view that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it can survive. Um, but I agree, like on your point with like the first mover advantage thing, because it's such like a new technology, it's evolving so quickly, and like our narrative is so far forward compared to the reality of the tech at the moment that, and it's a game of attention, and we're working with like micro attention spans as like generations move up. Um, that I wonder is like, can we bring the technology to the state that it needs to be in time before, other ecosystems build it? I think that'll be an interesting question to watch play out. However, I am pretty close with like the chain abstraction stack in lots of groups with those builders, and very confident on things like what Biconomy have just released, Layer Zero with their like single signatures. Very bullish on like the apps that have come out with like Universal X, showcasing kind of like how we can move chains to the background and bring experiences to the foreground. If we can do that en masse, but the question is like, okay, the tech is theoretically there, right? I mean, we're probably like over the next 12 months to 18 months, we'd like optimize the technology. Yeah, for chain abstraction, I'm talking, right? From like applications like particle network and one balance at the top with a universal account to Seda at the bottom doing verification of transactions in any chain. The question will then be like, okay, will there be enough apps to make chain abstraction a necessity? Because chain abstraction makes sense when you have lots of apps to move between different ecosystems, whether it's like arbitrary optimism. If you don't have that many apps and we're not all using apps like we do on our phone, it doesn't really matter. So we need to like win on there before anyone ecosystem wins. Because what will happen if that does, let's imagine that doesn't happen. You just have like a Hyperliquid or Hyper EVM. It has one great product that they built and everyone's kind of there, and then they cycle out their profits and use like some other fringe apps, but then they're kind of dominating five apps in the across the whole space, in which case chain abstraction wouldn't need to make sense. This is why like bringing like TradFi on and like real world assets and like stocks and being able to like lend against your stocks in Robinhood, for example, I would be super cool because once you like free up capital on chain with real kind of financial products, which is like the number one PMF for crypto, in my opinion,
Mhm.
um, then maybe we'll get like, and then like obviously like things like Seda bringing enough data to have different use cases. Then I would love to see like chain abstraction thrive, and that's when I think that we'll see the chain abstraction thesis of like Ethereum come to life because those experiences can exist as well as they do in Web 2 or better, and then the settlement layer is just happening in the background. Doesn't fringe, it doesn't affect the experience of the user on the app. Then it doesn't really matter where things are getting settled or you know the time that may take compared to like a monolithic system. If people are able to have their experiences with like pre-confirmations, making transactions very quick across whatever chain. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, as long as the app experience on the foreground is good, then I think like the Ethereum ecosystem is built to win when we have like a user dense app centric world. But we have to get there first.
Okay, yeah, that's another good explanation. Yeah, we're definitely. I like I said, I think we're very close, but we're not quite there. Yeah, so we'll have to
Yeah.
see if the infrastructure is going to be the key. I guess. Can you talk just a little bit more about like Seda? We probably have like 5 or 10 minutes left. Just about like your roadmap for the rest of 2025 and maybe just moving forward 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, perfect. So 5:30 today, CET, so like 2 hours. Our incentivized testnet starts. So basically, we're running now for about 4 to 5 weeks, weekly competitions under a category. So this category is going to be RWAs, commodities, and tokenized treasury funds. We have like a full prompt guide up for vibe coders, and then for real builders can come in, deploy Oracle programs, and then the most voted on Oracle program will get the incentives for each week. That'll roll across 6 weeks, and then we're going to do some sponsored ones with our first partners as well. So the incentivized testnet is for about 6 weeks. Then we go to mainnet V1, and then basically what that means for Seda is expansion. So we have like our pipeline that we've been building for 3 years, getting those first Oracle programs onto Seda, deploying our proof of contract to all the chains that we want to integrate with, which will be EVM first. Then we'll deploy it in Rust, Solana, and Sway for fuel is already locked in. We're working with the IBC team at the moment as well to be like a to pass data through the hub so that you can go to all the Cosmos chains as well through one centralized, one central location, not centralized, central location. So that'll be really, really cool. So that'll be like, I would say like the next 6 months after mainnet is really just like expansion, getting proof of contracts out there, getting the first Oracle programs on, and just seeing what the network can do and what people start to build. Um, and then after that, we'll look at like the first upgrades. So right now we've got like 15-second latency for data requests because we're not built for high frequency trading,
Mhm.
but we want to bring that down below 10. So we have the plans for that. The team's building some like OEV for like Oracle extractable value capture tools as well. Um, and then, yeah, we'll expand beyond the EVM basically and go to, yeah, Solana first and fuel. So I would say like 12 months expansion is probably the easiest way to say it once we hit mainnet. Because it's been a long time and our community's been waiting. So,
Yeah, well, you don't want to rush it. You want to make sure everything, is in place before you go, obviously.
amen.
Especially when you're
Yes.
moving, the most important part of the entire play. The data is
Yeah.
more important than anything. Uh, what,
Yes.
what, can you talk at all about like, have you done any major RWA partnerships or anything like that? Because I'm also pretty interested in real world assets too. So,
Yeah, so we're partnered with Plume. It's probably our biggest one. And then the other one is RWA World. So Plume, you're familiar with Plume. I think most people probably are now. Like it's a chain dedicated to RWA apps. So we have that partnership, and then on the other side we have a partnership with RWA World, who specialize in abstract real world asset data. So that sort of trifecta. We've actually written a report 2 weeks ago on what we're doing for RWA World. We'll bring abstract data to Plume and build there. We've talked to most of the other players, no formal partnerships yet, but we just released an article on the Seda Profile the other day for Collateralize and some of the conversations we've had with them, just highlighting like how we can. The big thing with Seda is like, okay, you could use like Redstone or a legacy Oracle to get the price of a real world asset, but how do you get like the in real life events on chain, right? Like a stock split, like any other corporate action. How do you mimic that in a dynamic real world asset? You need like the actual event data to come on chain. So we're talking with Collateralize at the moment. We've talked with Ondo, no formal partnerships, but we're in conversations about bringing that real world data on for them to affect the asset on chain as needed. But I would suspect that the first real world asset use cases through SATA will be on Plume.
okay. Yeah, I'm in the camp that pretty much everything of value will be on chain, tokenized on chain.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, dude, we had a conversation with Camp Network. I think if I can talk about this, I'm going to talk about it anyway. About like tokenizing. They wanted to tokenize TikTok trends for the Gen Zers of the world. Like it doesn't interest me. I'm not TikTok, got no
right.
interest in it. But these like flash markets appear with trends and trend value, and then having that like tokenized. I was like, I had never, because to me it's not valuable.
How would you tokenize the trend just like quickly? Like what is that idea like?
So basically, the trend is decided by like you could build in the parameters of likes, comments, hashtag virality,
Uh,
whatever you get from the TikTok API. That would determine like what's a trend and what's not, and
okay.
then you basically tokenize that, and then it lives on a marketplace like Camp, and then people would be able to trade those tokens as if it was another token, but it would
Yeah,
be like flash trading, I guess.
that's probably like the end game. I could
Yeah,
definitely see something like that happening because like we talked about
yeah,
earlier, t attention is everything basically, and it's just getting more scarce, I guess, or whatever, however you want to say it. It's
100%.
fleeting. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting thing to think about. Is there anything like link wise or anything you want to plug or mention before we get off here?
When will this be going live?
Probably in the next 10 to 14 days.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just want to plug the incentivized testnet. You don't have to be a builder. You can be a vibe coder. It takes like 30 to 60 minutes to vibe code an Oracle program on Seda, and we have the full prompt guide. You just need access to Cursor. So get in, join our Discord or follow us on X. All the information's there. I'd love to see some people come in and do what they think they couldn't do because building an Oracle program is super easy. If you've ordered a pizza on Domino's, you could essentially vibe code a Oracle program on Seda with Cursor. But if you're a real builder listening, come in and like, yeah, show us what you can do with your Oracle programs.
I'm definitely gonna have to check it out, as I already mentioned my interest in oracles. Matt, I
Yeah,
appreciate you taking your time today to talk to us, and I wish you guys nothing but the best the rest of this year moving forward, sir.
Yeah, and likewise to you and the InitVerse community.
All right, thanks a lot. I'll say a proper goodbye. Hang on one second.